Do you believe that the World Health Organization is good, transparent, and reveals all the terrible mental pathologies they know? Of course not. Some of them they keep hidden because they are so incredible, so terrifying, that if the world knew about the existence of these madmen, they might stop believing in governments, in the law. Few would dare to sleep without having a loud alarm and a sure and loaded weapon under the pillow. Stay with me, because today I'm going to reveal 2 well-documented files on these devastating mental pathologies and the stories of the patients who suffered from them. I am the documentalist, and this is the most terrible diseases that are hidden from us. Hucken sensory dettrimentitis. That is the name given to a beastly mental illness that originates between adolescence and 33 years old. They are completely normal people until then. But the same thing happened to the 7 documented cases. One day they wake up and feel that their bodies are not complete, just as I tell you. And it gets worse every time. Listen, we're not referring to people believing they're missing a limb. They directly need to complete them because, as they are, they feel humiliated, robbed, brutally deformed. Now their minds, disturbed by this pathology, want something desperately and can only think about that. In adding to their own humanity another being that completes them. And yes, they seek to sew some animal they find in the house, a corpse or a small child, to their own body, just as you hear it. Can it get any worse? Ha 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 ha, of course it can be much worse. Because once they achieve it, their deranged brain rewards them with an ecstasy that makes them incredibly powerful. The most famous case of this disease is that of Ivana, the Witch of the Needles. A woman as tall as a door who is now a fugitive after escaping from the Open Door Women's Psychiatric Hospital. However, there is a well-documented case, and it is the one I will tell you about next. Get ready for the story of Fred Hucken, the first patient and the one who gave the disease its name. At 25 years old, Fred returned from World War II, having served on the front against the Germans, but safe and sound, he returned to his home in Kansas. Bright medals adorned his tales of courage, which earned him the attention of the most refined ladies. He married Laura 2 years later, and from that union, Oprah was born. When the little one was only a few months old, her father, Fred Hucken, changed. The family doctor noted at that time. He came to the medical consultation alone, with an overcoat. He shows a detriment in his deep physical and psychic sensitivity. He enjoys pain and does not suffer from it. He expressed delusions about God. He said that our Lord had punished him and left his body incomplete for him to finish. I prescribed him the usual medications for disorders suffered by those who return from war, as I found nothing similar in the books. This could be a unique case, and I don't think pills will be enough. Fred returned to his house by the cemetery road. Something in his head told him he should go in, and then he saw it. That small white coffin, surrounded by family members mourning the loss of a child. He immediately smiled, looked for a shovel, needles, and threads, and waited for the night. A cemetery caretaker named Robert Powell caught him red-handed. And in his statement to the police, he said, that man, Fred Hucken, was sewing the child's corpse to his own chest, like some sort of human vest. I vomited at the sight. I'm used to seeing weird things, but never anything like that. Even though he was bleeding everywhere and said something like, "Finally, I'm done," and he ran off. I nearly caught him, but he jumped over the wall without using his hands. That's impossible. That wall is 2 meters high. No one would have believed the caretaker if it weren't for the fact that he had Fred Hucken's identification, which had fallen out of his pants when he jumped to escape. The fugitive beat a policeman to death who found him lurking around his house a week later, and there they decided to set a trap for him, and it worked. They were also waiting for him inside the cemetery, as they had found the boy's body torn apart in an alley. They believed the lunatic would return for another body. But when Hucken saw that the effect of satisfaction and ecstasy that having a dead person attached to him, completing his own humanity, did not last too long, he thought that if he sewed a small one still alive, it would be better. He entered through the upper floor window of the house and threw his wife, Laura, out the window to take his own daughter, Oprah. The officers assigned to catch him if he returned were sleeping in the kitchen. But thank God they prevented the murder of the little baby, who was about to be pierced by the madman's needles. In the psychiatric hospital, they conducted various tests and documented the disease's development and progression. They named it Hucken's sensorial Dettrimentitis. But the most prestigious science journals of the time refused to publish the research on such a pathology, and, after repeated rejections to publicize the case, the psychiatrists and doctors on the team left the study and abandoned Fred in a dark hospital for the mentally ill. It was not a very wise measure for the safety of the other inmates and the poor pets of the place. After a year, with very rudimentary elements, he had already killed and attached to his body 2 cats and a lady from the women's ward. Not everything was negative. Some doctors couldn't believe that Fred Hucken was still alive, after spending days and sometimes weeks hiding from the guards that he had a body attached to his own. Anyone would have died from an infection or bleeding out. However, he not only did not get sick, but he became stronger. Apparently, the mental disorder favored, among other things, the growth of bacteria that prevented death from infection. From that discovery, although it does not appear in official documents, drugs were created to treat patients with sepsis, which are still in use. Fred escaped after killing some guards. He had sewn to his own body the son of the asylum director, who used to go with his father after school, but he took the wrong path and entered the wrong pavilion. According to my research, the homicidal lunatic died 35 years later in a cave in Tallgrass National Park. The cause of his death is unknown, but at the time of finding his corpse, they found that he had sewn to his head 2 3-year-old twin brothers who were reported missing in the spring of 1987. Let's go with the second disease. Metamorphic Samsonism due to reading. The 3,059 cases registered worldwide share an origin. All patients suffered very high fevers over 41 degrees at some point in their lives. That is, they survived a deadly hyperthermia. It is believed that neurons suffer a generalized collapse and damage that forces them to generate new synapses to continue functioning. But the symptoms begin to manifest immediately. They feel an extreme voracity for reading. As the days go by, almost everything they say and do is related to what their favorite book characters have done. Then, after a few days of intense headache, the pathology deepens and changes, and there, the horror appears. By that time, psychiatrists have already recommended to the patients or their relatives that they be forbidden to read in any form. No magazines, no books, not even pamphlets. Nothing, unless they are administered a powerful experimental drug that prevents the consequences of their symptoms. Why? You'll see when I tell you about the latest case, when a man confessed to his priest what had happened. The confession is secret, so while he couldn't report it to the police or expose him, he left me a written account of everything he heard. Pay attention to what the man said who went to confess with a repentant heart. Look, Father, let me tell the story, please, and then forgive my sins. My dad has such a particular health problem that requires special measures to contain it, and this implies that we can never leave him alone. Don Camilo is an 84-year-old man and he is very sick, very sick. He has been living with us for 8 years, since the institute where he was closed. Every day, without exception, I administer a medication called Fyramine, which prevents the symptoms of his rare condition. I have become an expert in ensuring he always receives his doses, as it is of utmost importance to me. I don't have children with Yasmin, my wife, because we always wanted to focus on traveling and seeing the world, so you can imagine that this situation was wearing us down. I must say that up until a year ago, I felt like I was the one who couldn't take any more of everything my father implied. But since we had to let go of the last nurse for not administering his Fyramine on time and properly, my wife has been overwhelmed. My father's condition makes it difficult for him to be liked by the women who agreed to be his caregivers, and we didn't want to have any more problems, so we put up with everything ourselves, unable to travel, go out to eat, or even have friends over at our house. But we didn't want that anymore. My wife Yasmin found the solution. And that day Fernanda was going to take care of her, a specialist in treating older people. She came with the highest recommendations. My wife said she was the solution to our problems. To start the long postponed enjoyment, we booked a night at a somewhat upscale spa. Finally, we'd have privacy, without worrying about my father falling, eating what he shouldn't, and above all, making sure he gets his medication. We were happy. The doorbell rang and Yasmin greeted Fernanda Chernay. They both entered to the living room. I must say I was struck. She was very young and beautiful, with an air of superiority. I would say I felt envy for Dad, who was going to be alone with her until tomorrow. The introductions were brief. My father was taking a nap upstairs, so everything was going well, and the standard recommendations. Even though Yasmin assured me that everything had already been discussed, that Fernanda knew exactly what she had to do, I insist. Anyway, for my peace of mind, I told her, Fernanda, if he doesn't wake up at 8 o'clock, you wake him up and grab the Fyramine injection, which is already in the fridge ready. You put it in his left arm. No exceptions. Regardless of what he says, administer that dose. Fernanda, it's crucial he gets that medication. The rest is routine, I assume. Any questions? I put all my emphasis, but I noticed that Fernanda was very calm. She even hinted a half smile that made her even more beautiful. Yes, one question. Why are there so many children's books in the house? You don't have children, she said. It's due to my father's illness. He takes everything he reads very, very seriously, so we only give him innocent and happy reading. After the medication, if you want, you can read him something. It's important that you don't read him anything before the Fyramine. Fernanda winked at me complicitly. He did it to affirm that everything has been understood. Although I would like to think that at my age I was still attractive to such a splendid woman. Glasses, cell phone, car keys. I picked everything up from the table and we left. We arrived at the spa 2 hours later. On the trip, my wife and I laughed a lot. We discovered that we had forgotten how wonderfully well we get along when we are alone. Once settled in, the joy lasted 40 minutes. Turns out the cell phone I grabbed wasn't mine but Fernanda's, the nurse's. Same brand and color. A common mistake. My wife was in the jacuzzi and couldn't see me. I did what we all would do. I checked her photos and... bingo. I quickly found some erotic ones. However, with the title Jobs, there was an album with about 70 images and I saw them all. I pulled my wife out of the water horrified, telling her, "Get dressed, we need to go back urgently." Something very bad is happening with Fernanda. Look at these pictures from her cell phone. Call home, tell her that if she doesn't leave now, we will call the police. For God's sake, Yasmin, hurry up, this girl is an angel of death. All the old people in the photos aren't sleeping, they're corpses. My wife didn't even flinch and replied to me, "I don't plan on leaving here, nor do I want you to call anyone." God, he deserves it more than anyone else. Let Fernanda do her job. We will get back the life we had, Yasmin said. And there I understood everything. She had planned it. And I don't blame her. I also wished for Dad's death. I tried a weak defense and said, "But Yasmin, do you think so?" Since he started taking the medication as prescribed, he hasn't had another episode. 3 minutes later, he was relaxing in the jacuzzi, sipping champagne. I'm not going to lie to you, Father. Yasmin is right. And judging by the photos, Fernanda was a professional who knew what she was doing. But the conscience is treacherous. It was 3 in the morning, and I couldn't sleep. I woke up my wife and asked her if she knew what was going to happen. How would Fernanda kill him? Yasmin, half asleep, responded. She switches their regular medication with a potent and undetectable poison, disguising it with a penicillin base. Don Camilo is going to think that they're injecting his pheramine. He won't suspect a thing. Afterwards, she will read him a story to keep him calm. It took effect after about 2 hours. He must be dead by now. Please rest. Tomorrow is a big day. Once my wife finished saying this, it only took us 4 minutes to get in the car and urgently head back home. 2 hours without pheramine? Oh my God. Who would think of that? On the way, Yasmin was trying to calm me down, but it wasn't working. Believe me, she was telling me, "Honey, I'm telling you, he must be dead already. If not, what's the problem? At home, everyone are innocent books. Calm down." What my wife was saying didn't match the nerves I had when dialing the cell phone to call home. No one was answering. I held on to the hope that the nature of her job would make Fernanda not very fond of answering a phone that would place her at the crime scene. We arrived in record time. The first thing I smelled was grilled meat. There's a book on the floor. No. My God. Hansel and Gretel? No. Dad was lying on the dining room floor, convulsing and foaming at the mouth. The poison hadn't killed him. His illness must have delayed the effect. I approached Fernanda, who was in the kitchen. I bent down to talk to her. Didn't you understand that the pheramine was crucial? How many times did I tell you? You should not read anything to him without his pheramine. I explained to you, I made it clear that it was because of his illness, that he took everything he read very seriously. Now look at all this mess. She wasn't listening to me, of course. Dad put his head and part of his torso inside the oven at maximum heat, like Gretel did with the witch. She had been burning for at least 4 hours. I turn off the gas. The smoke is suffocating me. Oh, I'll tell him. Dad got up from the floor a while later as nothing happened and went to sleep. He was okay. He asked for jelly and for us to release his brother Hansel. It took 10 hours to clean everything. We buried Fernanda in the back, next to the half-digested body of Little Red Riding Hood, the previous nurse. I am the documentarian, and this was the most terrible diseases they hide from us.
I woke up without arms, without legs, without a face. Something is missing, my shadow deceives me. The dead walk, they whisper my name. They say that the thread makes them more men. Silver needles sewing the wound, the incomplete body, the rotten soul. The boy looks at me with glass eyes. I join him to my chest, and there is no longer a void.
Don't touch me, don't look at me. My skin is not my skin, my flesh does not live.
God made me broken, I rebuild myself. If the world is a body, I will be its. The fever burns me, the letters speak to me, they scream secrets in strange tongues. Hansel calls me from the other side, says the oven is already prepared. The books bite me, they drink my mind, their pages bleed in every present. The witch tells me not to be afraid, that everything ends in the fire. Don't touch me, don't look at me, my skin is not my skin, my flesh does not live. God made me broken, I rebuild myself. If the world is a body, I will be its. The documentarian has already opened the files. The shadows whisper what has never been read. If I tell this story, I bite my lips, but the needle pierces through the years. Don't touch me, don't look at me. My skin is not my skin, my flesh does not live. God made me broken, I rebuild myself. If the world is a body, I will be it. They call him master, and he pursues virtue. He works in the shadows to serve the light.
Special greetings to all channel members. Andrés Ramírez, Abril Suárez, LDGR, Eliana Castañeda, Jess Lili Montes, Milagros Rutherford, Nicolás Flores, Soulia, Paulina Cabrera Eret Jimena, Miguel Urbina, Sara Marrazo, Franco Mancilla, Wings Omega Furcero, Fabiana Guiesa, Miguel Ángel Luis Batista Mendoza, Miste, Tamara Naxu, Ernesto P., Jonathan Micael Mordarotti, Paul, Brenda, Lorenzo Guarchac Siquín, Chris Alexander, Ana María Morín, César Galvez, Big One, Freddy Villalobos, Matías Gabriel, Riquelme Fernández, Carlos Chiti, Pierre Iván Rame del Real, Energy Detective, Germán Virgen El Chuta, María Raquel Pérez, Miguel Troncos, Vinela Vallecillas, Thomas Big Wolf, Villarroel Frieva, Adán, Rosy, María Félix Martínez, Héctor Bautista, Edu Eiti, Rosario Guisache, Amalia Contreras, Patrick Rosas, Alan García, Lucas Mulhall, Gloria Reya, Verónica Pereira, Eleonora Rosy Farías, Nubia Cantú, Brian Barbe, Leonori, Julio Vidal Dowsing, Juan Ramón Ignacio, Dani Cardea, Rosalinda Velázquez Estrada, Álvaro Medina, Keimar Chávez, Jesús Mora, Miriam Romero, José Balsino, Jonathan Pacheco, Lawis Galván, Juan Jacobo and Carlos Montes. Thank you and see you next time.